From the Podwires newsroom at podwires.com.
All right, so get this right. Podcasts, they're becoming like the place, the go-to for actual trustworthy information. Like seriously, they're topping the charts, beating out, even your classic radio and TV. I was looking at some research, and it's actually pretty surprising. And yeah, I know what you might be thinking. With all the ads we hear these days, it's like really podcast for trustworthiness. But that's kind of the whole point of this deep dive, right? We're going to break down these podcast trends, get into the data, look at things from Edison Research, and even Spotify itself. So trust, right? What's the deal? This research is saying 40%, a full 40% of people, podcasts are their most trusted source for information more than any other media. And what's even wilder, it's not just podcasts, it's streaming audio as a whole, way ahead of social media in the trust department.
See, that's really telling. It shows you the kind of connection, the relationship between podcast hosts and the people listening, the listeners. You're right. It's a totally different vibe than like a news anchor, right? On TV. Podcasts, there's this intimacy, this authenticity that just builds trust naturally. It's like listeners feel like they know the hosts, get them, and that changes how they take in the information,
Exactly. Like that friend, the one you always go to for the real deal, the inside scoop, except it's your favorite podcast host. And speaking of trust, here's another thing from the research. 58%, so over half of listeners, are totally cool with ads as long as it keeps the podcasts free or, affordable. Shows you how much people value this whole thing, the medium, the creators, the whole 9 yards.
And there's been a lot of talk about all the ads on podcasts these days, but that tolerance, that 58%, that's huge, especially compared to other media, like way more tolerant. People get it, Creators got to keep the lights on somehow.
It makes you wonder, though. So many people listening while they're doing stuff, right? Driving, working out, walking the dog. Are those ads even working? I mean, most people aren't glued to a screen while they're listening.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? That's what marketers are trying to figure out right now. They call it screenless shopping hours. Basically, those times when we're not staring at a screen, they're becoming prime real estate for advertisers and podcasts. They're right there in the middle of it all.
And that brings us to the next big thing shaking up podcasts, right? Video podcasts. So remember all that trust stuff, that closeness we were talking about? Imagine adding video to that. Turns out, listeners, they're really into it, this whole immersive experience. I'm looking at Spotify's numbers here, and get this, almost 8 ALF, like nearly half of their users. When they started an NUW podcast this year, they went with one that had video. That's huge, right? It shows you how much people are digging this format. Oh, and get this video podcast listening. Overall, up by 88% from last year. Massive.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a shift. People are changing how they listen, for sure. Audio is still king, don't get me wrong, but video, it's gaining fast. And honestly, it makes sense, right? Think about it. YouTube, TikTok, all that we're swimming in video is only a matter of time till it hit podcasts, too.
Right. It's like that saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. But here, it's video, and it's with thousands of spoken words. But it's more than just, oh, video's cool, let's do it. The interesting thing is why it's clicking so well.
Well, for one, it's way more engaging. Think about it, video podcast. You're less likely to be checking your phone every 2 seconds, right? Or browsing other tabs. That visual, it keeps you locked in. Plus, you see the hosts, their expressions, body language, the whole deal. Adds a whole other dimension.
Totally. And speaking of being engaged, the data shows something wild. Video podcasts, especially smaller ones, from independent creators, they actually hold people's attention better. It's like that visual element gives them an edge, keeps listeners hooked.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. Video coming in, it doesn't spell doom for audio only, not at all. In fact, Spotify's advice to creators, go hybrid.
Right. Don't ditch the audio, give people options.
Yeah.
Some folks, they're happy with just audio, but others, they're all about that video experience. Makes sense, right? Offer both, you keep everyone happy.
It's about meeting the listeners where they're at, Different folks, different strokes. And here's something I appreciate. Spotify's telling creators, don't stress about the video being perfect, super polished, expensive production, all that. Just start creating.
Love that. It's about getting the content out there, right?
Yeah.
You can always tweak and improve as you go.
Exactly. It's this hybrid thing, audio and video, that seems to be the sweet spot. Experiment, reach more people, and ultimately tell your story in a way that hits harder,
And it's not just individual people, making this video leap. We're seeing the big players, the established names in podcasting, they're making moves too. There's this new studio, right? Just landed a massive deal with Audacy.
Yeah, that's interesting for sure. So Audacy, for those who don't know, huge name in audio, right? And this deal, it tells you something, right? Like even these big companies, they're seeing where things are going with video podcasts. They're putting their money where their mouth is, investing in this whole evolving world.
Totally. Sign of the times. Right. And it's not just random content either. This studio, they're all about true crime and mental health. Two of the hottest genres in podcasting right now.
Smart move, for sure. I mean, those topics, they just work so well with video. True crime, you've got all these layers, right? The story, the evidence, the places. Video brings that to life. And mental health, it's about connecting, right? On an emotional level, seeing those visual cues, it adds a whole other dimension.
It's like you're taking these stories that are already gripping, and now you're seeing them, experiencing them in this whole other way. Makes you wonder, right? Where's this all going? Listener engagement, the whole podcasting landscape, it's all got to shift with video becoming more and more the norm. So this got me thinking, right? Knowing all this, the video, the choice for listeners, that trust we talked about, does it change how you feel about those ads now? Like, do you cut podcasts some slack, knowing they're trying to make it work in this crazy changing world? Or maybe are you more likely to give a video podcast a shot now? Try something new.
It's definitely a wild time, right? To be into podcasts, to be a creator. But one thing's for sure, podcasts, they're not going anywhere. Actually, they're just getting bigger, more interesting, more part of our lives. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens, how people listen, how creators tell those stories with audio, with video, with everything.
This episode is brought to you by Podwire's Marketplace, the best platform for finding top podcast service providers and podcast producers. We've selected the best, and we're ready to make your project ideas a reality, no matter the size. We will achieve your business goals together. Find podcast experts who understand your market and will help you grow your business. Learn more right now on the homepage, https://marketplace.podwires.com.